Hey guys, and welcome back. I got an awesome video for you. I get this question a lot is, how do I do the perfect takeaway? How do I get the swing started? So we know if we can get the swing started on track, it's gonna be a lot easier to continue on track and to hit some nice solid shots. So how do we get that first few feet of the swing, happening correctly? One of the big mistakes that I see a lot of times is players dragging the club to the inside. We're gonna address that in this video. We're also gonna talk about how to sync up your body, your hips, your shoulders, your club, your arms, get all that in sync so everything can be nice and rhythmic and fluid. Now, before we get started in this, one thing I do want to go over is a lot of times people become obsessed with very small details. I am going to get into a lot of detail because I know you guys want answers to these questions, but don't ever become completely obsessed with the takeaway. There are some great players out there, major championship winners. Some players come, the club's a little bit outside their hands. Some players, the club's a little bit inside their hands. So it's not all about, we can nail this perfect takeaway and still hit bad shots. We can have a terrible takeaway, or not a terrible takeaway, but we can have flaws in our takeaway that don't look perfect on camera and still hit the ball amazing. So that's one of the big keys with the Top Speed Golf system is we don't want to get wrapped up in tiny details, even though I am going to give you answers to those questions. We don't want to get wrapped up in so many details that we're so worried about the takeaway that we completely forget about our rhythm, our timing, hitting the ball solid and getting it to go to our target in the distance. So enough about that. Let's get to the details, and I'm going to start from the ground up, going every single piece of this. When we set up at address, we're assuming here that my feet are pretty much going to be parallel with the target in the distance. I went ahead and put this stick down on the ground. And what we're shooting for here is a pretty good shoulder turn, letting that club come back. And when the club's parallel with the ground, it should also basically be parallel with this stick. That would be my club coming back, very nicely on plane, as you would call it. Now, one of the major things that has to happen here, if I put this ball here, that needs to happen is I got to transfer some weight to my right side. And the reason for that is I have to put some pressure in the ground with my right foot to allow my hips and my shoulders to start to turn. This is what people call ground force reaction. So sounds fancy, but basically all it is, I'm pushing into the ground. That's going to allow my body to rotate. So as I set up to the ball, the very initial move, my very first move that has to happen with the takeaway, I have to start putting some pressure into my right foot, and the pressure actually kind of goes down and out this direction. And when I do that, that's going to allow me to rotate my hips. So you'll notice in the takeaway, my hips start to rotate. If we just watch those, just a couple degrees, maybe 10, 15 degrees at the most, as I'm getting that takeaway and as I'm getting the club to parallel with the ground. So there is a little bit of hip rotation. There's also quite a bit of shoulder rotation. So when I put that pressure in the ground, that allows me to rotate my hips, and then against my hips, I'm going to let my shoulders rotate. And the easy way to do this is try to keep your right arm pretty straight, but relaxed. So I don't want to lock my right arm straight and force it. It's going to be nice and relaxed, but I'm not going to let my right arm fold. If I let my right arm fold up, I can pull this club back a million different ways just by using my hands and my wrist. If I keep my right arm fairly straight and don't let it bend very much, and I just rotate my torso, now I'm going to be in a pretty good position where I'm letting my shoulders turn. Once I get those shoulders turning, I can continue that all the way to the top of the swing and get a good full shoulder turn there. So it all starts, the very initial motion, no matter what your technique is, no matter who you use as a model, who your favorite swing is, it all starts by putting a little bit of pressure kind of down and out into the ground. So if you're a kind of player that tends to hang on your left side, now all of a sudden I got to really fight and work to try to get my takeaway happen right. You're going to feel like your timing's off. I want to have a little bit more weight in my right side, maybe 60%, as soon as I start back off the ball, and then, or as soon as I start my takeaway. So if we're looking at that from the down the line view, let's take a look at that same thing. I'm going to go ahead and set up here, and again, you'll notice my right arm is fairly straight. I'm putting a little bit of pressure into the ground, and now when I stop when the club's parallel with the ground, you'll see how my right arm from this angle is pretty straight. Now it's not, again, like I said, locked, but it's fairly straight, and that forces my shoulders to rotate. Now, one of the mistakes that I'll see, as I mentioned, is starting to pick that club up with the right arm to pull it back. We're right-handed golfers, we like to do things with the right hand. So if one of the most common ones is pulling the club to the inside, and you'll start to see the hands are actually going out. So if you look at when I do the perfect takeaway, you'll notice that my left hand is right about over my toes, or kind of around where this stick is. And there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. It could be here in this general area. What I don't want to do is let my hands come out this way. So when the left hand goes out away from my body, to compensate, what you're naturally going to do without even realizing it is letting your right wrist bend back and start to suck the club to the inside like that. So a lot of players go inside and then come over the top, especially players that struggle with a slice a lot. So when we're doing this takeaway, one thing I want to work on, I want to focus on, is my right wrist. As I go all the way here, I'm going to let my shoulders turn, and I'm only going to have a little bit of bend in that right wrist. If I start to feel like my right wrist really bends a lot, I'll know that I'm sucking that club to the inside. Same thing with my left wrist. At address, it's a little bit cupped here, slight bend in my left wrist. As I continue to the end of the takeaway, you're going to notice it still has a little bit of bend in it. If I start to pull that club to the inside, well, now you've noticed this has really started to bow, and I'm losing that cup, and that club starts to go in here. So if you're struggling with that, what you're going to feel, this is an exaggeration, but you're going to feel more like as you turn back, you keep your hands in and let the club stay outside of them. When you do that, when you look on camera, you're going to see it's more something like this. But this is very little wrist motion, very little wrist movement as that's happening. So that's the biggest mistake I see people getting the club to the inside. There are also players that tend to pick the club up outside like that. And again, that's me not rotating my hips, not rotating my shoulders, and I'm picking the club up. So you'll notice my right arm starts to bend a little bit too much, and I'm picking the club up like this, getting my thumb to start to go up a little bit too vertically. So it's kind of a picking up motion where you'll notice my shoulders aren't really rotating very much. I'm just all arms. So again, I want to feel like my wrists do hardly anything, and then from there, I'm letting my shoulders get the club to go back. So those are two of the really common ones. Now lastly here, we're going to talk about how much the arms move up and down, which is a very small amount, and then a big kind of topic of controversy is how much we should rotate or pronate the club. So at the end of my takeaway, should my club be straight up and down? The leading edge of that club be straight up and down? Some players will tell you it needs to be there. If you look at, early 2000s of Tiger Woods, that's what you're going to see, something like that. You look at Adam Scott, some of the best looking swings out there, that club's going to be a bit more vertical that way. You look at some other players and they try to match the leading edge of the club with the spine angle. So which one is correct? Well, it really comes down to preference. And what really happens here, and the reason that doesn't particularly make a huge difference, is that it's all going to change right after that anyway. So if I'm going to the end of the takeaway and here my club matches my spine, well, at the top of the swing, my club face is going to match the back of my forearm, and it's going to rotate open anyways. So even if it's closed here, at the top of the swing, it's going to be open regardless. It doesn't really make much difference. So I could go closed, I could do this at the end of the takeaway. That just means I have to rotate a lot more in the second half of the swing. If I'm more toe up, that means I'm gradually kind of letting that rotate throughout the entire backswing. So that rotation happens from what's called pronation and supination. So my left forearm, if I grab that, you'll feel there's two bones that roll over each other. As I do my takeaway, that starts to pronate a little bit, or turn, like you grab a doorknob, turn it to the left. My right arm, same thing, or excuse me, turn the doorknob clockwise, turn the doorknob to the right. Same thing with my right hand, I'm turning a doorknob to the right. That'd be called supination. But I have a little bit of that throughout the backswing to get this club to come back and the club face to stay on plane. So if I don't do very much of that in the backswing, I have to do, so if I keep my hands kind of closed, I have to do twice as much to continue the backswing. If I don't do very much in the takeaway, I can do twice as much as I go to the top. If I do a little bit more in the takeaway, then I can just continue that same pronation, supination happening all the way to the top of the swing. So it's a little bit down to your personal preference. What we don't want to do is to have the club face, very open and then have it wide open at the top of the swing, or we don't want to have it very closed and keep it really closed at the top of the swing. There has to be a little bit of pronation, a little bit of rolling of the forearms as we go back to the top. So that's going to cover the main pieces. One last thing here, how much do we need to lift up? So a good rule of thumb is as you get to the end of your takeaway, your club, when it's parallel with the ground, should be somewhere between the bottom of your pocket, just below there, or the belt buckle, or the belt itself. So if I'm really picking my club up with all hands and arms, kind of like this, You notice my club's already parallel to the ground and it's way down here, because all I'm doing is just kind of flicking the club up with my wrist. I'm really not using my shoulders again. Again, the key is a little bit of pressure in that right foot and let my shoulders rotate. We're not using much wrist action at all. So my club should be parallel with the ground somewhere in this general zone here. And if you're doing that, you're having a nice wide takeaway. That's going to create a big arc. So if I pick the club up, all of a sudden I'm creating a narrow arc, not going to get a lot of speed. If I keep my arms, again, right arm straight, big arc going back, now I can really create a lot of speed in a big arc, and I can create some easy swing speed like that. So let's recap on the major pieces here. Number one, I'm starting out, I want to have a little bit of weight on my right side. We go over in the Top Speed Golf system how we have what's called the stable fluid spine. We get a little bit of tilt. That's automatically going to set you up where you can get that weight on the right side early. Number two, I'm not going to use the wrist or the arms very much in the takeaway. I'm going to let the rotation of my body bring the club back. And then lastly there, I'm going to be parallel with the ground somewhere by around pocket height. And I'm going to go ahead and I can pick which one I want to do as far as how much pronation I get, but I have to continue that to the top of the swing. So if I do that, I'm going to be perfectly on plane. I'm going to look just like some of your favorite golfers out there, Adam Scott, Tiger Woods, those kind of guys. Let's go ahead and hit one, and we'll see how I do with the takeaway. All right, guys, nail that takeaway. You'll be hitting some great shots. All right, guys, I hope y'all really enjoyed this video. If you did, I got an even better bonus for you. If we want to get distance in the golf swing, we've got to get a lot of lag, and then we've got to let that lag go. Well, I've got my #1 lag video. I'm going to play a preview of that here in a second. If you're on a desktop device, go ahead and click the link that pops up on your screen. If you're on a phone or a tablet, click the iCard that's somewhere on your screen right now. That's going to take you to where you can get instant access to that full video. Plus, you're going to get 5 videos from our Top Speed Golf system. Never going to cost you a dime. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Click that thumbs up button, that really helps us out. And also remember to subscribe, that way you'll see our newest videos. See you guys in the lag video. Hi guys, and welcome back. I'm Ballard, and in today's video we're going to talk about one of the absolute worst drills for creating lag. It's a very common drill that I see. And in this drill, what we're going to do is we're going to set the wrist very early to create an angle of lag, and then we're going to try to hold this throughout the swing. It's one of the worst things that you can do to build lag. I'm going to talk about the science behind why this is the case, and I'm also going to give you a great drill to help you improve your lag, all in this video. Let's go ahead and get started. If I do it this way versus holding that position, exact same thing happens when we're building lag in the golf swing. So what we want to do is throughout the swing, I want to have a very low and wide takeaway. So I'm not going to set my wrist early at all. If you look at a lot of the top players, you look at Adam Scott, very wide takeaway, not very much wrist set at all. You look at Rory McIlroy, you look at Tiger Woods, all these players are using a wide takeaway and not getting very much wrist set, so that later in the swing, as we start down, we can increase this wrist set, and we're really only going to max out this angle of lag for a split second in the downswing. Okay, so a 3-step drill here. Now, as we get started with this, I want to remind you that the fulcrum in this golf club for getting a massive amount of lag is right at the end of the golf club. This is where I want my hinge point to be.